So I guess, the first question, since we're talking a lot about our backgrounds, what do you see as like the prerequisites or skills that someone needs to have before they can start using AI to build these apps? Do they need to have technical backgrounds like us, or can somebody coming from purely like financial background or just business development, are they still able to benefit from this?
So I see this as a force multiplier for anyone with any type of background. It basically lowers the barrier to understand programming languages. So I view generative AI as kind of like a translator. So Google Translate, um, you translate from English to Spanish or Russian. It doesn't really matter what language. It'll get it not 100% right 100% of the time, but it gets it pretty close enough that someone else can understand what's going on. So I think that this generative AI is kind of similar. So if you have an idea, if you want to make like a derivative on what you guys are doing, like perpetuals, right? Like derivatives on perpetuals, and you're some options person but don't know how to program, then you can get really, really far with generative AI. Um, Far in terms of protocol design, in terms of what kind of tooling you need, setting up your development environment, what kind of testing you need to make sure that this works properly, and then eventually like getting into testnet, uh, seeing if users are interested in this. So it goes from the very start, the initial concept, all the way down to launching eventually on mainnet. It really speeds everything up. And I think, um, if you know how to program, that's even better. Then it'll make you a 10x programmer. And if you're a 10x programmer, it'll make you like, 20x programmer. So I really see this being used everywhere. So personally, I've been trying out all these different tools. Uh, like GitHub Autopilot was the first one, Tab 9. So a lot of these tools are going to change over time. This is a new field. So you're going to see a lot of VC developer tooling out there. And some of them will make it, some of them won't. And so the tooling I'm talking about now, I think they're probably going to stay, but you never really know how things will play out. So autopilot, for those who are not familiar, you create like a comment, like make this for loop iterate through all the NFTs in an NFT collection, and then it'll auto-generate the code for you down below the best that it can. It's not 100% right, um, but a decent amount of time it just works. And when it does, it really feels magical. And a lot of things like the rote tasks like autocomplete, the syntax, templating, tests, all these kinds of things free you to think more about the creative elements, like how do you get users to use this thing, and which AI can also help with. So I don't know which direction you want to go with this, but I think that that's like a pretty good overall view of the current landscape.
Yeah, I think, what are the limitations? Will it, do you think it'll get to the point where it's like 100%? Do you think that it'll get to the point where people can just kind of describe what they want in like human words, or is there still like an element of um, understanding? Oh, I'm going to ask them to create a for loop and then give me like these variables structured in like this way.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the current state of the art is basically OpenAI GPT-4, and that will probably fluctuate over time. Like there was this open source Apache 2 model that was released, I think, yesterday, called Mistral. Mistral 7 billion model, and it seems to outperform GPT-4. It's like 30% in generating Python scripts that actually run. So the limitations that, uh, getting back to your question, the limitations that I see, um, the English language for like, give me a list of restaurants, tell me what is a good color for a house. Uh, English is extremely messy, and programming languages, a subset of like human languages, are more logic driven, and you can see um, uh, models uh, that are trained on like programming textbooks, on code examples. They actually display advanced reasoning, which is like a very surprising emergent quality. So I think that programming may end up being mostly a solved problem in the future, which is like, pretty bad for me as a programmer. But maybe it's really good for someone else who can do coding and something else like marketing, or knows how the blockchain works, or like front end and like UX and coding, for instance. Uh, yeah.
Yeah, I
So
mean, where do you well then where do you go after if it's going to do the programming? Like, is there still like manual review, or can you, I mean, you also work on like AI auditing, so it's going to replace that part too. What role do you see programmers continuing to play?
so I think the pure programmer will be pushed more to the edges. So web development in general, I think that might be commoditized. Same thing with, uh, and let's talk about timescale too. So it's not like everyone's going to be out of a job tomorrow, right? Like this is more like a timescale of 10 years or so. So to specialize would probably be in your best interest. So um, like what I'm thinking is, with all this different code being generated, uh, what is that data that is getting fed into these models to generate the code? So some of that is from Stack Overflow, for instance, and a lot of that code is vulnerable in some way. Like maybe SQL injection for Web3, it might be like reentrancy, for instance. And uh, when that code is being generated, the program itself may not realize that it's spitting out vulnerable code. So I think that no matter what's happening in the model, you're going to need specialized models afterwards to clean everything up, to double check the work. And maybe that model is like a senior software engineer, or an auditor, or uh, like what I'm trying to build, an AI auditor.